I'm Elena Min Carter, and I'm 32. I stood in my parents' driveway long enough for the dusk to soften into that blue hour where everything looks gentler than it is. 3 years. That's how long it had been since I'd turned my back and said I needed space, and then let space become silence. At 29, I opened a small restaurant, neon sign, handwritten menu. Built around the way, my mother slices scallions at an angle so they look like confetti. It failed in 18 months. The bank took the lease. The grease smell lingered in my hair for weeks after I handed over the keys. My father had co-signed the business loan. When the default notice hit, it didn't just bruise his credit, it broke his future. He'd been calculating routes for an early retirement road trip with my mom, national parks like beads on a string. Instead, he took overtime and then took more. He never once said it was my fault. The worst thing he did was look tired. The first year after the collapse, I still went home for Sunday lunch and pretended not to notice how my mother rinsed every jar clean for coupons. By spring, I started needing to work weekends. By fall, I'd stopped returning calls. I told myself I was sparing them the sight of my shame. What I was actually sparing was my ego. Now I was back because I was getting married, and the idea of publicly promising a future without repairing the past made me feel like I was trying to build a house on a sinkhole. I could hear the TV through the door. Local news murmur, my father's constant. I knocked. My mother opened it, and her face moved through 5 seasons in 2 seconds. Surprise, joy, caution, relief. Then something softer I can't name. Her hair was grayer. The new lines around her mouth made her look more like her own mother. She said my name as if she were confirming I was real. "Hi, me," I said. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside, and the house smelled like lemon dish soap and the past. My father was in his chair with the paper folded into a perfect rectangle, as if creases could control life. He set it down slowly. We stared, strangers with matching eyes. "Work going okay?" he asked finally. "Food distribution," I said. "Steady. I'm steady." He nodded, like that was a weather report. My mother brought coffee I didn't need, and we sat and did the awkward dance people do when the truth is too big for the room. So I cut straight into it. I told them I was engaged. I told them his name was Daniel Pierce. I told them I was sorry. Sorry for the money, the mess, the vanishing act, the cowardice of letting my guilt do all my talking. My mother's eyes filled, but she didn't speak. My father listened without blinking, like he was afraid if he moved, I'd disappear again. When I ran out of apology, he said, "When's the wedding?" "June," I said, 4 months. "Does he know about all this?" he asked. "The loan, the 3 years. He knows everything." My father picked up his coffee and set it down again. "We paid off the remainder 2 years ago," he said. "Sold a few things. Scaled back the trip. The money hurt less than losing you. There are feelings that arrive like a door slamming, and others that slip in like fog. Shame is a fog. It rolled through me, tucked itself into my rib cage. I don't know how to fix it," I said. "Start by not disappearing," he said. "Whatever else, we're still your parents." My mother's hand found mine. "Tell me about Daniel," she said. "When do we meet him?" I told them the basics. How we'd met at a distributor summit where people pretended warehouse margins were a topic for cocktails. How he was good at planning, at charming waitstaff, at ordering champagne with the exact amount of flair that said celebration and not look at me. My mother smiled, hopeful, careful. When she asked about the engagement party, I told her it was in 2 weeks. "Are we invited?" she asked, and I heard the hope tilt toward the edge. I should have said yes, loudly, decisively. I should have grabbed my phone and called Daniel right then, put him on speaker, asked him to say the words that would stitch us all together. Instead, I stumbled. "It's at Daniel's parents' house," I said. "They're planning. I need to sort some details." My father's face cooled by a few degrees. My mother's smile held, but it trembled. I realized too late how my hedging sounded, like I was still afraid to put them in the same room as my future. "Figure out your details," my father said, "but don't take too long." I left with homemade sesame cookies I didn't deserve and a knot in my throat I did. The sky was dark when I parked outside Daniel's apartment. His lights were on. Through the window, I could see him at the kitchen island, laptop open, jacket off, sleeves rolled. The picture of capability. I wanted to step into that picture and let it frame me. He didn't ask how it went when I walked in. He just kissed my temple and said he'd ordered Thai. "Everything's under control," he said, gesturing at a spreadsheet. "Seating chart, bar list, My mother got the florist to bump us up. Did you call my parents? I asked. Could you? I swallowed. It would mean more coming from you. He glanced at his watch, then at the phone face down by his elbow. Of course, he said. I'll handle it. Tonight? I asked. Yes, a quick smile. They'll be thrilled. Relief, like a warm blanket. Thank you, I said. I didn't do great at the end. I froze. If you could just, I made a helpless motion with my hands. Make them feel wanted. I'll say all the right things, he said, and he meant it as comfort, but it landed oddly, like a promise to perform, not to care. While we ate, his phone buzzed twice. He ignored it the first time, flipped its screen down the second. When he went to grab more ice, the screen lit again. Jasmine. The name blinked like a little lighthouse. By the time he returned, the notification had vanished under his thumb. I didn't ask. He told me about Jasmine Vale in that curated, past-tense way people confess old chapters they consider irrelevant. College girlfriend, serious for a while, not the right timing, still on good terms. Your parents will be there, he said. I'll make it special for them. The word special stung, and I wasn't sure why. It doesn't have to be special, I said. Just respectful. Easy, he said, as if respect were a tap he could turn on. Over the next week, I asked him 3 times. Always casual, always pretending not to be braced for an answer. Did you call them? Did you get them? Did they sound okay? Not yet. Work was chaos, he said the first time, kissing my forehead. Tomorrow. Left a message, he said the second time. Stepping into an elevator, already talking to someone else on Bluetooth. It's handled. They confirmed, he said the third time, breezing past my desk on his way to a tasting. 2 glass flutes clinking like punctuation. All set. Each answer unknotted me a little. I sent my mother a text with a red heart and said I couldn't wait for her to see the dress. She sent 3 heart emojis back and asked if she could bring the sesame cookies to share with his family. I typed, yes, please, and then backspaced and wrote, yes, with an exclamation point that tried too hard. On a Tuesday night, I woke at 2 a.m. to the soft glow of the living room. Daniel was on the couch in the dark, laptop open on his knees, scrolling through a guest list. The light made his face look theatrical, like he was already on stage. Can't sleep? I asked. He jumped a little. Just finalizing a few things, he said. My parents want to make sure the atmosphere is right. The atmosphere, I repeated. They're excited, he said, and there was pride in his voice, not of me, but of the production. He set the laptop aside and pulled me into him. Don't worry, he said. We want your family to feel comfortable. That we was another odd note. I let it pass. I told myself that love meant delegating sometimes, leaning on a partner's strengths. His strength was making things look effortless. Mine, lately, was trying not to cry in grocery stores. The day before the party, I bought my father a tie, navy with discreet diagonal stripes, the kind men wear when they want to signal reliability. I imagined him standing beside me under the fairy lights in Daniel's parents' yard, my mother's hand in my arm, her cookies on a white tray that wasn't good enough for her, but she'd pretend. I imagined what I would say when I introduced them to the people who were becoming my family. This is my father, who taught me to keep my receipts. This is my mother, who knows how to turn a mistake into a recipe note. That night, as I was drifting off, Daniel said, "What time should I send the car for your parents?" I smiled into my pillow. "They'll just drive," I said. "But thank you." "Everything's going to be perfect," he murmured. The word perfect is a trap dressed as a promise. I didn't know then how tight the jaws were. In the morning, I packed the tie and a little emergency kit, needle and thread, aspirin, a tiny stain stick my mother swears by. I placed the kit in my bag like a talisman against chaos. I texted my mother, "See you at 6. I love you. 3 dots. Then, we love you too. So proud of you." I held the phone to my chest and let myself believe, for one last soft minute, that the hardest part was over. That apologies plus time plus a pretty backyard could equal repair. That Daniel would do the one thing I'd asked. That I had finally built something that wouldn't fall down. The morning of the party arrived with the kind of sky that looks ironed, flat, bright, unwrinkled. Daniel texted at 8:03 a.m. "Big day. Don't stress. I've got the logistics. A blue heart, not red." I told myself the color didn't matter. I drove to his parents' house at noon to help with setup. because I can't stand being the kind of guest who shows up when the candles are already lit. Their neighborhood is the kind with whispered property values, where even the sidewalks seem to have had their pores refined. The Pierce house wore its wealth without apology. White brick, tall black door, hydrangeas like powdered wigs. When I rang the bell, the chime was so elegant it felt private. Daniel's mother, Caroline, opened the door. She was the sort of beautiful you age into, composed rather than bright. "Elena," she said warmly, air kissing the space beside my cheek, "you look fresh as a peony." She smelled like bergamot and certainty. Inside, everything was under control. Rentals arrived in a quiet ballet. Caterers moved as if they'd rehearsed the kitchen. Daniel's father, Richard, affable in a crisp linen shirt, was decanting wine like it was a performance piece. Daniel stood in the center of it all, sleeves rolled again, directing with 2 fingers and a smile. He looked like a man whose life turned out exactly as planned. "Hey, you," he said, crossing to me. "We're ahead of schedule." I held up the small bag with my mother's sesame cookies. "A contribution," I said. "She'll bring more tonight." "Perfect," he said automatically. "We'll plate them with the petit four." It was noon, and the party was at 6. The tie for my father was folded carefully in my purse like a promise. I wanted to ask, "What time did you speak to them?" but I didn't. I had already asked 3 times this week, each time receiving a different flavor of assurance. The last one, they confirmed, had settled on my bones like heat. "Florist at 1:30, Daniel continued. "Musicians at 3. The bar captain is a genius. He remembered you like your spritz, not too sweet. My mother found you a little corner in the den for touch-ups and nerves." "Nerves?" I echoed, smiling because that's what you do when you're given a den for your nerves. "Everyone gets them," Caroline chimed. "It's the good kind. Anticipation. I booked a photographer for golden hour. The light is forgiving." Forgiving, as if light could absolve. I followed Daniel into the backyard. A tent scalloped the lawn, fairy lights draped like galaxies. There was a table assigned family. I touched the card as if it might hum. "Do you want your parents near the head table, or would they prefer a little distance?" he asked, as if this were a detail like napkin fold versus flat. "Near us," I said. The answer surprised me with its clarity. "I want to look over and see them." "Done," he said, and moved the place cards himself. Quick, neat. His phone buzzed. Reflexively, he flipped it and tucked it into his back pocket. A small, unimportant motion that snagged in my mind. The last 3 days he'd been surgically attached to that phone, arranging linen shades, shuffling RSVPs, juggling a florist who'd mixed up the peonies and ranunculus on the order sheet. It felt odd to see him hide it now. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Always," he said, and kissed my forehead, an affectionate stamp. By 2, the florist arrived, tall buckets of stems swallowed by tissue paper. I helped unwrap vases, my hands smelling like green water and roses. Carolyn gave me a tour of her favorite objects, oil paintings of moody boats, a silver tea service the size of a small planet, a slender vase Daniel had won at a charity auction. Each story had a moral of, "We belong here." At 3, I stole 10 minutes in the den. The room was masculine in a leather and books way, the kind of place where men have conversations that decide other people's days. I opened my emergency kit and laid everything out. Safety pins, stain stick, needle, thread, aspirin, a tiny vial of lavender oil. My mother would have laughed at my arrangement, called it a battlefield. I texted her, "Leaving you the den at 5:55 p.m. for lipstick and nerves. Park wherever. Daniel's parents said to leave the driveway for you." I added a heart and hit send. The typing ellipsis appeared, then vanished. No reply. They were probably busy, I thought, choosing her dress, convincing my father to try the tie. I pictured them softening toward this night. The image soothed me for 5 seconds, then let me tumble. I called my mother. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't want to sound like I was checking. At 3:30, the musician did a quick run-through. Daniel's father raised a glass to the tuning fork. "To beginnings," he said. It landed like a toast designed by a marketing team, universally applicable. On my way back through the kitchen, I caught Daniel half-turned toward the pantry, phone angled. Jasmine's name flashed, for a fraction of a beat. He swiped the notification away with a practiced thumb. When he saw me, he smiled with his whole mouth. "Taste this," he said, offering a tiny spoon of sauce. "More acid needed?" Maybe a squeeze of lemon, I said. My voice sounded normal. Inside, something folded into itself. Good call, he murmured, already moving. You always catch the details. So do you, I thought. All of them except the one I begged you for. By 4:30, guests began texting to ask about parking. Caroline toggled a walkie-talkie like a general. She'd hired 2 attendants to wave people toward side streets. We keep noise down and cars off the main, she said. Neighborhood bylaws. Everyone's happier if you anticipate. I checked my phone. Nothing from my mother. I called my father this time, straight to voicemail. An image zipped through my mind uninvited. An accident, a hospital, a reason that would make sense of my prickling worry. I shook it away. Fear has a costume closet and tries everything on. Everything okay? Daniel asked, coming up behind me, warm palms on my shoulders. Have you talked to them today? I asked, keeping my tone airy. Just to confirm timing? Early this morning, he said without a seam. They're good. 6 o'clock. Did you send them this parking note? I pressed gently. Covered, he said. Elena, breathe. I promised to handle it. He squeezed my shoulders once, affectionate and slightly patronizing, like smoothing a wrinkle out of a dress. I breathed. He had handled everything else. The caterers, the rentals, the schedule that unfurled like choreography taped to the floor. The part of me that remembers invoices and back-of-house triage wanted to salute. The part of me that remembers a small neon sign flickering out wanted to pull the fire alarm. 5:30. I put on my dress. Sleek, not white, a rehearsal for the future without inviting superstition. In the mirror, I looked like the kind of woman who belongs in a well-run life. In my purse, the tie waited. I imagined my father's hands as he slid the silk into a neat half-Windsor, patient, practical. 6 o'clock. The first guests arrived like pearls spilling from a velvet pouch. Daniel's colleagues, neighbors, his mother's Pilates friends whose bodies seemed to belong to some other era's Grecian ideal. I smiled. I was gracious. My cheeks felt pleasantly numb. 6:15. I drifted toward the driveway for the 20th time. No old sedan, no careful park job slightly crooked because my father refuses to back up twice. I texted, "Traffic? Need me to come out?" The message showed delivered and did not budge. Daniel appeared at my elbow with a glass of water. "Hydrate," he said, gentle. "They'll be here." "What did my mother say when you talked to her?" I asked, absurdly, as if the answer would conjure a car. Was she excited? Nervous? He looked over my shoulder, scanning arrivals. "She sounded like a mom," he said. "You know." "Like my mom," I said flatly, because there is a difference between generic and specific, and you can hear it. A woman from the neighborhood association floated by and told Daniel the azaleas looked like a magazine. I excused myself and texted again. "All good?" Dots. Disappeared. 6:45. A server offered me a canapé and called me Mrs. Pierce, and the way Daniel corrected her swiftly, "Ms. Carter for now," should have charmed me. Instead, it felt like he was editing a caption. I found Caroline near the bar and said, casual as I could, "Have you seen my parents?" "Not yet, darling," she said, bright compassion in a flute. "But not to worry. People never arrive on time to these things. It's almost gauche to be punctual." "My parents are punctual," I said. "They set 2 alarms for the same time, just to be sure." Caroline's smile flickered. "We'll keep an eye out." 7. I called again. Voicemail again. The fear costume came back, zipped itself up without asking. I walked to the side of the house where it was quiet enough for my heart to be its own noise. Daniel followed. "Elena," he said softly, "you're going to make yourself sick. Your parents are fine. They know where to be." "Repeat to me exactly when you spoke to them," I said. "What time? What did they say?" He exhaled, and something in it annoyed me. Exasperation wrapped as patience. "This morning," he said. "I told you." "What time?" I said. "What words?" He looked past me, toward the tent. Then he looked at me, and for a split second, his face emptied the way a stage does between scenes. "Elena," he said, reaching for my hand. "I promise to handle it." "I'm not asking for a promise," I said, stepping back. "I'm asking for a sentence I can verify." He glanced at his pocket, tiny, betraying. My mouth went dry. "Did you call them?" I asked. No air, no lace, just the question. He hesitated inside a single, microscopic heartbeat, and I felt the exact moment gravity changed. "I meant to," he said, voice low. It's been a lot. The week got ridiculous. I thought you'd mentioned it to them already. I assumed. You told me twice you left a message, I said. You told me they confirmed. He swallowed. I must have conflated it with another call. There were a dozen moving pieces. I didn't want to stress you. I stared at him, and what I saw wasn't malice. It was something worse, in a way. Calculation draped as care. Protection of optics, masquerading as protection of me. Say the word, I said quietly. Say you lied. A pulse ticked at his jaw. I forgot, he said. That's not the same as... A server drifted into view and then wisely out of it. Somewhere, a glass broke and polite laughter followed. The party kept being perfect around our rotten core. Why? I asked. Why didn't you want them here? He looked away and then back, weighing the cost of honesty like it was a tip. It would have been complicated, he said finally. With the history, with my parents hosting, I didn't want tonight to become heavy. I wanted it to be seamless for you. For me, I said, and tasted metal. You made a judgment call about my parents, about my family, without telling me. And then you rehearsed your answer 3 times. Elena. I brought my father a tie, I said stupidly, as if that detail could hold up the sky. It's in my bag. Navy. Reliable. He reached for me again. I stepped back again. The fairy lights buzzed. The music swelled as if on cue. My phone sat cold and silent in my palm. I'll call them now, he said, desperate bright. We'll send a car. No, I said. You don't get to solve this like it's a limo shortage. He opened his mouth, closed it. For a 6 second, I thought he might cry. Not for what he'd done, but for the scene he couldn't control. I put the tie back into my purse with shaking hands. I looked at the perfect tent in the perfect yard and thought about my mother's kitchen, where the light is bad and the love is not. The word engagement flickered like a neon bulb that's been hit too many times. Daniel, I said, my voice steady in that way cliffs are steady. We can't get married. Somewhere just beyond us, applause rose for nothing to do with us at all. It's strange how silence can be louder than a crowd. After I said the words, we can't get married, the air seemed to thin around us. Daniel stared like I'd just spoken a foreign language he didn't study. Elena, he said, voice too soft to match the chaos in his eyes. Don't do this here. Why not? I asked. Here's where you lied. He reached out like he could smooth my words into something less jagged. This isn't about us. It's about optics. My parents. Your parents? I almost laughed. The ones who think discomfort is contagious? Who host family parties without my family in the picture? He winced at the volume, his hand twitching toward my arm. You're upset, and you have every right. But we can handle this later, please. Guests began noticing. Eyes lifted from champagne flutes, whispers rippled like low wind through the tent. His mother, Caroline, appeared at the edge of the lawn, a look of polite concern glued perfectly in place. I could have stepped back, pretended it was nothing, smiled for the cameras, played the part of the composed fiancé who forgives quietly. That's what Daniel was silently begging for. Damage control, not understanding. Instead, I breathed once, twice, and walked into the tent. Excuse me, I said, my voice cutting clean through the string quartet. I have an announcement. Every head turned, including Caroline's. I felt the exact moment Daniel's panic shifted from internal to visible. We won't be getting married, I said. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like standing still after months of sprinting. Daniel caught up beside me, whispering urgently, Stop, Elena, you don't have to. But I did. I looked out at a sea of polite faces, most belonging to people who knew everything about Daniel and almost nothing about me. I spoke anyway. I asked Daniel to invite my parents to this engagement party. 3 times. He told me he did. He didn't. A gasp moved through the room. Not loud, but collective. The kind of sound people make when their reflection cracks. Caroline took a step forward, voice measured. Sweetheart, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. There was, I said evenly. I thought honesty mattered. Her lips parted. No words came. Daniel's father, Richard, stood stiffly behind her, jaw tight enough to grind glass. Daniel turned to me, eyes flashing between anger and shame. You're humiliating yourself. No, I said. I'm setting myself free. And I walked out. The night air hit me like cold truth. I didn't even know where I was going, maybe to my car, maybe nowhere. My hands shook as I unlocked the door, the small tie in my bag brushing my wrist like an accusation. I sat behind the wheel but didn't start the engine. My phone screen glowed in the dark. A text from my mom sent 20 minutes earlier. Mom, we're at home, honey. We thought the party was next week. Is everything okay? I read it 3 times before the meaning hit. Next week. Daniel hadn't just forgotten to invite them. He'd lied so smoothly that even my parents believed it was their mistake. A fresh wave of humiliation burned through me, not just for what he'd done, but for how easily I'd trusted the way he said, "I'll handle it." That phrase had been his favorite promise: tidy, efficient, impossible to verify. I drove without realizing where I was going until street signs started looking familiar, the route toward my parents' house. They were still awake, porch light on, maybe waiting for me. My father opened the door before I even knocked. "Elena," he said, frowning, "is everything—" "It's over," I said. My voice cracked on the second word. "The engagement. Daniel didn't invite you. He lied." My mother gasped softly behind him, hand covering her mouth. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "You should have been there. I asked him, over and over. He told me you confirmed." My father's shoulders dropped, like a weight he hadn't agreed to carry had just been placed gently back on the floor. "Come in," he said. "Sit down." I did. For a long time, none of us spoke. The house felt smaller than I remembered, but safer too, a place where mistakes didn't have to be rehearsed into apologies. When I finally told them everything, from the calls to the excuses, my mother said quietly, "He decided for you." That sentence broke something open. "Yes," I said, "he decided who deserved to belong." My father leaned back, eyes unreadable. "And now?" "I don't know," I admitted. "There's money, the wedding fund. I was thinking—" He cut in gently. "Save it. You don't need to make a grand gesture." But the thought had already rooted somewhere deep. Use the money to fix what guilt broke. When I drove home hours later, Daniel had texted 17 times. "Daniel, we need to talk. Daniel, you overreacted. Daniel, my parents are devastated. Daniel, I made one mistake. Don't destroy us over optics." Optics. That word again. He still didn't get it. I didn't respond. I deleted every message. By morning, the story had already spread. Guests gossiped faster than fire. My phone buzzed with, "Are you okay?" Texts from his friends, coworkers, even one from Jasmine Vale. "Jasmine, I heard what happened. Daniel's heart's in the right place. Just bad execution. Maybe give him another chance." Bad execution. Like this was a marketing rollout gone wrong. I blocked her. The next day, I made 2 phone calls, one to a realtor, the other to my mother. "There's a house for sale next to the Pierces," I said. "I saw the sign a month ago. I think it's still on the market." My mother hesitated. "Next door to them?" "Yes," I said. "It's perfect for you and Dad. 3 bedrooms, good neighborhood, safe. I'll cover the down payment." "Elena," her voice was careful, "is this about him?" "It's about us," I said. "You always said mistakes can still feed something good if you know what to plant after." There was a long silence, then, "Your father will want to see the listing." When I hung up, I looked at the engagement ring still sitting on the counter. A perfect diamond reflecting the kitchen light back at itself. I left it there and went to meet the realtor. The house was exactly as I remembered. Symmetrical, trimmed hedges, the kind of porch where people pretend everything's fine. You could see the Pierce's manicured lawn from the front yard. The irony was too perfect to ignore. As we toured the place, I pictured my parents drinking morning coffee on that porch, waving politely to the people who deemed them unfit for appearances. The realtor smiled. "The sellers are motivated. It's been sitting for a while." "I'll make a full offer," I said. She blinked. "Would you like to discuss it with your fiancé first?" I smiled faintly. No fiancé. Paperwork was signed within hours. When the offer was accepted, I called my parents again. "It's yours," I said. "Elena, are you sure?" my mother asked. "That's a lot of money." "It was meant for a new beginning," I said. "Just not the one I thought." The movers came early on a Wednesday. My parents had labeled every box with careful handwriting. Kitchen, linens, tools, Dad. Memories, Mom. I brought coffee and donuts, pretending I wasn't watching the Pierce house across the hedge every 5 minutes. By noon, the Carters officially lived next door to the people who thought they didn't belong. The neighborhood association's welcome committee dropped by first. 2 women in pastel sweaters bearing a fruit basket and cautious smiles. They spoke mostly to my mother, charmed by her calm warmth. When they left, one whispered something like, "So kind, so normal," before the gate clicked shut. Caroline didn't come over that day. Neither did Richard. But by evening, their curtains twitched like guilty eyelids. On the 3rd morning, the doorbell rang. My dad wiped his hands on a dish towel and opened it. Daniel stood there. He looked rough, creased shirt, jaw stubbled, eyes bloodshot. The perfect man had lost his polish. "Is Elena here?" he asked. "She's not," my father said simply, even though my car was in the driveway. Daniel glanced past him, saw the moving boxes, and gave a humorless laugh. "So it's true." "What's true?" "That she bought this house just to torment us." My father's voice stayed even. "My daughter bought this house to give her parents a home. The fact that it unsettles you is just coincidence." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Tell her she can't hide forever." My father smiled politely. "She's not hiding. She's living." Then he closed the door. He told me the story later, dryly amused. "You were right," he said. "That boy doesn't like being told no." I didn't answer, but inside something settled deeper, final. 2 days later, he tried again. This time, my mother answered. "Elena's busy," she said before he could even ask. He tried charm. "Mrs. Carter, please, just 5 minutes. I want to apologize." "She's heard every version of your apology already," my mother said, her tone as gentle as a blade. "If you really want to make amends, start with yourself." When he didn't move, she added, "Or I'll call the police for trespassing." He left. That was the last time he tried to come in person. A week passed. The Pierces pretended nothing was wrong, though their composure cracked in tiny ways. Richard's forced nods at the mailbox, Caroline's smile that evaporated too quickly. The only thing louder than their silence was gossip. The neighbors were kind, though. Some dropped by with casseroles or spare tools, polite curiosity masked as friendliness. My parents fit in fast. They joined the association, volunteered for the neighborhood cleanup, brought their genuine selves into a place that didn't know what to do with genuine. And the best part? No one cared who Daniel Pierce was. At the next association meeting, my father was asked to lead the community's safety committee because, as the president said, "You seem dependable." I nearly laughed out loud. Dependable. The same man Daniel once implied was too working class for a refined gathering. 3 weeks after the move, I stopped by one evening to help hang curtains. From the porch, I saw Caroline tending her rose bushes, pretending not to notice me. I waved anyway. She hesitated, then returned a faint, mechanical wave. Inside, my mother was unpacking her favorite tea set. "You don't have to come by every day," she teased. "I like it here," I said. She poured me a cup, steam curling between us. "You're calmer," she said softly. "Lighter." I smiled. That's what happens when you stop trying to fit into someone else's picture frame. We sipped in silence. Then she said, "I saw him at the grocery store yesterday." I didn't ask who. I already knew. "He looked lost," she said. Tried to apologize again. I listened, but only because I wanted to hear what kind of man he's become. And she stirred her tea. Still a boy who thinks regret is the same as growth. That landed hard, but true. "What did you say to him?" I asked. She smiled faintly. That forgetting to invite us wasn't the mistake. Thinking we weren't worth inviting was. I exhaled, a laugh breaking somewhere between pride and pain. "That's perfect." She patted my hand. "It's honest." By autumn, Daniel moved away. I heard it through a neighbor, who also heard it through Caroline's fragile smile at the HOA potluck. "He's taking time for himself," she said, as if that were a vacation, not a consequence. His parents kept to themselves after that. They still wave, stiff, brittle, but my parents wave back, effortlessly kind. That's what unnerves the Pierces most, I think. Grace where they expected grudge. The neighborhood grew used to us. My parents' porch became a gathering spot on mild evenings. Kids dropped by for cookies. Neighbors borrowed tools. The Carters weren't a curiosity anymore. They were home. Sometimes I visit after work and sit on that porch with them, watching the sunset melt through the hedges. My father reads the paper again. My mother hums. And for the first time in years, the silence between us is peace, not penance. The house next to the Pierces has already gone up in value. 60,000 more, the realtor says. But that's not what mattered. What mattered was this, that the same money meant for a wedding became a bridge back to the people who never stopped loving me. That the woman who once hid in shame now walks freely through the neighborhood that once looked down on her. That every wave from my parents' porch reminds the Pierces of the truth they tried to bury. Family isn't decoration. At night, when the porch lights glow warm against the dark, I sometimes imagine Daniel driving past, seeing my parents laughing, seeing me there with them, and realizing he can't curate that kind of happiness. It's not revenge, it's reality. Because in this neighborhood, the story everyone remembers isn't the ruined engagement or the canceled party. It's the quiet miracle of the family who moved in next door and refused to disappear again.